My name is Amber Williams. I'm a behavior analyst. I work with kids with autism. I love to run. I'm very active. I've run a lot of marathons and half marathons. This is my husband, Zach, and he's a coach at Orange Theory. So we're very actively involved in Orange Theory as well. So May 3rd of this year, 3 days after I ran the Oklahoma City Memorial Marathon, I was at work and it started just like any other day. We went to Orange Theory that morning. I felt fantastic. Had a lot of energy, was at work. About 10 o'clock in the morning, I was just walking down the hall to go talk to our center administrator. And I felt very severe pain in my chest and pretty quickly passed out for about 5 minutes. I came to and I just was really disoriented. I wasn't really sure what was going on. So I was able to get up. I got to my phone and I called Zach and said, something's really wrong. And he's like, well, what's wrong? And I said, I don't know. I didn't even know how to describe what was going on. I was like, I think I'm sick. So he picked me up, took me to a emergency department close by where I was working, and they ran all sorts of tests. I remember I hit my head pretty hard when I fell too, and I was very nauseous. So I remember all I wanted to do was just like close my eyes and sleep. And I remember I kept asking, like, can I just lay down? Can I sleep? And then I turned to Zach at one point and was like, do you think I'm having a heart attack? Like, I've never had chest pain before. And that was really the only thing I could think of is maybe I'm having a heart attack. So they did several tests that first night. Nothing really of note came up. But thankfully the cardiologist that was on call in the ER at the time still kept me overnight because he said in his gut something just didn't add up and he didn't know what was going on. His name was Dr. Khalid, and I feel like I owe it to him for saving my life because the next morning they decided to repeat all the tests and they found both a type A and type B dissection. So, he came in and told me, you're having a dissection, we're transferring you to a different hospital, an ambulance is going to be here, and you have to have open heart surgery. And I had no idea what was going on. I had never heard of an aortic dissection before. And I remember asking him at the time, I was like, can I just go home for a few days? Because I was like, can I just think about this first? I really don't want someone cracking my chest open if it doesn't need to be, because you can't really go back from that. And he said, no, like you need to go. You're having this now. So probably maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours later, I was in surgery. So they called Zach, let him know. I think he had run home to get me some clothes and different things. And so Dr. Khalid actually called him and, told him that they were transferring me to a different hospital. Which I don't know, what was your reaction? Did you have any idea?
Actually, it's funny. I ignored the call for the first time because he had a area code for my hometown in Connecticut. I thought it was spam from home calling me, and so then when he called me again, I realized it was not spam, and so I picked it up. But he was, I actually caught up with your ambulance when you got there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was driving back, and he told me, "Don't come to the hospital. You're en route." So I just happened to swing right, take a left instead of a right, and I got right behind your ambulance. I assume was your ambulance. It was coming from that on the highway from where you would have been. So yeah, I mean, I knew that morning that you were going to do surgery. I think that they were trying to keep you calm and entertain the thought of you going home. But when I saw that they made you NPO, it's like, no, you're going to surgery today, or there's a possibility to go into surgery today, because you asked me for something to eat. I was like, I can't give you anything. Like your chart says NPO, so I can't. I'd love to, but I can't. So yeah, I met you there, and then I didn't. We have a friend through our gym who we know who's a cardiac nurse, not on that exact unit, but the unit next door, same floor, the same hospital, who was absolutely just invaluable, super helpful. She took me through all the back doors of the hospital, like pulled up Amber's chart on the computer and found her because I didn't know where you were. I mean,
Yeah. And I came in from the ambulance, so like he called me and was like, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "I don't know." Like somewhere.
So they helped us find her, and so eventually I found you, and that was what, 11:30 in the morning or so, maybe noon. And they told me you were scheduled for surgery at 3, and gosh, I mean, you 3 on the dot, they're wheeling you out of that room. So yeah, they moved pretty quick. It was actually amazing. It really reassured me to see how organized, and it was, they'd obviously done this a million times before. It was super coordinated and really well handled. Doctor was super helpful, explained to me, explained to you what was going on. Then you went in, and I don't really know what happened if they took you out of that room.
I don't really remember. Well, actually, I do remember a couple things. I remember like it being really cold, and I remember the really bright lights. And I remember as soon as we came in the room, I think they yelled the time, just because I guess they officially record, once the surgery starts. But in hindsight, I'm glad I didn't really have a whole lot of time to think about it, because the last few months, so it's been almost right at 6 months, 6 months and just a few days since I had surgery. And the more that I learn and research about it, it's a little bit terrifying. So I am glad that I didn't know necessarily all of that ahead of time and didn't have the time to really think about it and worry about it. So the surgery went well. It was 9 hours long. And Dr. Khalid, like I said, I can't thank him enough. He actually also called my parents, talked to my parents, let them know what was going on. Because, Zach was trying to handle everything else. And my parents ended up flying out. They got there, I think, right before the surgery was finished.
Yeah, so they finished about 1 a.m. and your parents got there a little bit before midnight. So you were out of surgery when they got there, and they're just giving you blood products, I think, just kind of monitoring you. But you were out of the surgery, but not out of the surgical theater yet. So they were still putting blood back in you.
So they came out and they were able to stay with us for a few weeks. They kept me company, while I was in the hospital. Because these are some of the things that you don't necessarily really think about when something like this happens, is that I didn't know how the recovery was going to go. Thankfully, I recovered fairly quickly, but I didn't know how long I was going to be out of work. Or
if you'd ever go back.
Or if I'd ever go back. And so, Zach was still trying to work. And then, when I was in the ICU, I was in the ICU for about...
You're there for 10 days. No, you were in the hospital for 10 days. You're in the ICU for 7.
Yeah, for a couple of days. And then they transferred me to another unit. But when I was in the ICU, he'd go right from work and then, come spend the nights with me. And my parents kind of spent time with me during the day and kept me company during the day, which I'm really thankful for. So the whole thing, I ended up being in the hospital right about 10 daes. And I'm so thankful that while I was there, my parents were able to be there and help me out. All of the nurses, the doctors, everyone, my surgeon, Dr. Howell, was incredible. Like, it's really made me think of too that, these providers, they're not necessarily planning on, going into a 9-hour surgery, and then all of a sudden, something happens and they're called. And, I just...
They're under contract to be there within 30 minutes.
I did not know that. Yeah. And so that's something that I think, and also just all the nurses too, like seeing just how much that they do and how helpful they all were, wasn't necessarily something that I thought about. I've seen maybe nurses like at a clinic, but I don't remember the last time I've been in the hospital. So like
surgical nursing too is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah. And I don't know that I've honestly ever, at least that I remember when I was little, I think, but I don't ever remember being in the hospital even overnight before. So just all the things they have to help with, they were really incredible. And, I can't thank all of them enough for helping me, even just with things like, I remember that, the first day that they tried to get me out of bed and I was like, am I going to be able to do this? Like, I can't move. And, just helping encourage me and, being there. And they, really, it was pretty eye-opening just to see. And even there were kind of some funny stories, especially once I started to be a little more alert of just other patients at the hospital too, and just things that, that I would hear and, just difficult situations that they would be in. Yeah. I'm like, they do so much. So I went home after 10 days, was out of work for maybe 2 weeks. And then
you went back to work way too early.
Yeah. And then I worked remotely till about July, so three months. And then I went back and I've been like part-time at our center, part-time remote since July, and I recently transitioned full-time to our telehealth team. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I have been back into Orange Theory. I cannot say enough good things about our Orange Theory community. They were so supportive. They did so much for us. They're really an amazing group of people. A lot of them came by and just kept me company in the hospital.
It's just small things too, like taking the dogs out. Like when, you can't, things you don't think about not being able to do. So you couldn't lift more than 5 pounds, 8 pounds
for a long time.
So too. We have small dogs, but they're heavier than 8 pounds. Like not even being able to lift up your dog for months, you weren't allowed to do that, or anything heavy at all. You couldn't get them on or off the bed. You couldn't do, and so even help with small mundane things like that you don't think about are huge. Just taking the dogs for a walk or taking them outside or grabbing some extra stuff because I was still working a lot. And that was huge, just finding a community that can help you and being able to ask for help too. I think there's an element of pride that there's maybe a temptation not to ask for help, and just understanding like this is an all hands on deck situation where and since you started recovery, honestly with Amber, I feel like I've had to tell her to slow down more than I've had to tell her to speed up. She's you wanted to go back. You were walking while you're in the ICU. You got out and started going to the gym like 2 or 3 weeks after you got out of the hospital. She was back in the gym, and it was one of those things that we had to keep telling you to slow down. Every time we go to I would go with her to every appointment with the surgeon and with the cardiologist, because what they would say and what she would hear were completely different things. Of like, all right, so can you do this at the gym? Can you do this in walking? Can you do this? And they would, give very measured, researched, professional, intelligent responses. And Amber here, okay, I can go running again. No, it's not all. Stubborn. It's not all what they said, and you're gonna put yourself at risk. And so I think for you, slowing down has been really hard, and accepting, that you have limitations you didn't have before. It's a major. And I think what really kind of helped you is finally, like what you said earlier, is actually researching what they did. Because I don't think you really knew, and you're like, why can't I do some of these things? Like your heart was not hooked up to your body. Like imagine they cut through your chest, and your heart's hooked up to a machine while they're doing all this work on your heart. Like that is like, if I were to say, hey, give me a list of the most invasive surgeries possible, that's at the top of the list right there. That may be brain surgery, like, but even then, like, you're having to, it's the center of your body, and so it's you understanding you have to take more time. Hell, we were in the gym this morning lifting weights. It's like, I still need you to, I think it's great that you want to get out there and get back at it, but you have to understand these limitations that you have. It's not your fault. It's not you didn't do anything wrong. It's just you are where you are, and that progress is going to be measured, and you have to be realistic with it. There's going to be things you can't do or shouldn't do. You don't have anything to prove to anybody. I mean, the fact that you're alive that's proving it right there. Like your cardiovascular health and damn miracle saved you, and so you don't have to prove anything. You already did that.
Yeah.
So now just being here and being where you are is enough proof, as far as I'm concerned, anyway. So, I mean, your recovery since then, like.
Yeah, for the most part, like I feel, most days I don't necessarily think about it a whole lot. There's times that like today my chest has been a little bit sore, but it also really dropped in temperature. So
Well, it's gonna rain too, which is useful. I mean, you can tell me if it's gonna rain.
But for the most part, like I'm pretty good. Sometimes I get frustrated because I feel like, my body's just not the same as it used to be. Like I was running a little bit this morning and I was definitely tired, and I'm looking at my watch of what pace I'm going. I was like, I used to be able to do this in my sleep, and I'm like tired, which is frustrating. And I would have to say that's probably one of the hardest things is just getting used to and accepting that and things aren't quite the same as they were before, and that's okay. I can still do a lot of these things I love. We're planning on doing the Tulsa Marathon here in a week and a half. I originally slowly we're gonna walk and run. We signed up like a year ago before this happened to do the full marathon. So we're planning on doing just the half, and just going slow and running and walking. So I still get to be a part of that, and do the things that I enjoy. It's also been really helpful to some advice that I would give for anyone newly diagnosed or a new survivor, is just get involved in research and learn as much as you can. A few weeks ago, I started kind of following some different support groups and just reading different information. And I found out about the Cleveland Clinic, and they have like a sports cardio center there. So I'm looking into doing that just because there's not a lot of information specifically in terms of, exercise and what is safe. And so I just want to get as much information as I can, because I feel like the more information you have, it helps you just feel better and more confident. Because it is like anytime I feel a little twinge in my chest, I get nervous, and a lot of that is normal. But you just don't know, sometimes I just feel like any tiny little pain that I feel, it could be something bad that's happening. And so I feel like the more research and the more information that I can find and really understanding what's going on has been helpful for me. And just talking to other people, I know there's been a few times where I've read things people have shared, and I'll share it with Zach and be like, look, this is how I'm feeling. Sometimes I can't describe it, but I know the other night I woke him up and I was just really, really sad because I was just like, I'm just scared. What if something bad happens? And what if you live longer than I do? And, what if I'll never get back to the place that I was and be able to do all of these things? And sometimes it's hard to express that. So when, you're able to talk with people that have had similar experiences, I feel like that's really helpful, because sometimes they can put into words things that maybe I haven't been able to super well yet, or that I've tried to describe, but maybe they say it in a way where my close friends and family can understand a little bit more. So I would say that's been really, really helpful for me.
Yeah. I think also, as far as kind of more mundane things, if you do have the diagnosis, whether you're before surgery, after surgery, there's a lot of things. We live in a really great time where you can plan for some of these things. So Amber was lucky in a lot of ways that she was able to get herself back up, but there's a scenario where nobody found her, where she was passed out for minutes, and she was able to get herself back up. There's a scenario where nobody found her for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. And so if you have this diagnosis, there's tools that you can do to plan ahead for the worst case scenario. And, it's like planning a will or anything like that. It's not fun to think about, but, getting that planning up front. So, I mean, even something as simple as Amber's Apple Watch, the new ones, if she falls or stops moving for a certain period of time, it'll call me and call an ambulance. That's useful. It's a relatively inexpensive way to just kind of give you a little bit of peace of mind, and it could save your life if something does happen. And I worry about her being here alone, working from home, because if something were to happen where I'm not here, or nobody's here for an extended period of time. Like, working from home is great, but you got to plan too if nobody else is around. I mean, how are you going to deal with something happens? So that's a good way of doing it. We talk and check in a lot during the day, which, if you're able to do that, that's great. And then just kind of thinking financially. So we're lucky that we have a lot of support, and that we both, are fairly, in good shape. I mean, we both, are lucky to have good jobs and good professions, but your short-term disability insurance was expensive, and so you didn't take it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when this happened, we didn't have short-term disability insurance, which we were able to navigate just fine. And our health insurance paid for the majority, I think, out of almost $600,000 in medical bills. I think we ended up altogether paying $6,
Mm-hmm.
just regular $6, not 600. So, which is really great. But the short-term disability stuff, if you're in a position where maybe you have to be supporting your family, or you have to be, taking care of others, or just, for me, I was going back to work, because if I didn't work, we wouldn't, make money. And I was worried, like, okay, well, I'd like to be with my wife, but I also got to make sure that we're financially solvent. And so that peace of mind, knowing you'll have that help with caretaking too, I can't stress if that's available to you, take it, especially if you know that this may happen to you, or there's that risk. It's really, I understand it can be expensive, and it's not, available to everybody, but be planning ahead for the worst and hope you never have to use it.
That's one of the reasons why I didn't take it out, because I'm like, I'm healthy,
Right.
In my 30s, I'm not.
Well, and we had been monitoring this, right? This wasn't something that we didn't know about. She had been the cardiologist 4 or 5 months prior, and they had measured it and said, your aorta is enlarged, but it's not within, the danger zone yet. So we're going to monitor it in 6 months. Well, we didn't make it to 6 months before it ruptured.
When they say enlarged, it was like very not far off what.
Yeah, I mean, we were.
So,
yeah, it was not. It was,
everyone we talked to was like, this isn't really a whole lot to be concerned.
Yeah, I mean,
about.
none of the doctors were concerned.
Yeah,
but we didn't make it to 6 months, and so we didn't plan ahead like we should have. We didn't take it as seriously as we could have. We thought it was, oh, well, maybe in 10 or 15 years they'll do a catheter surgery and fix it right up, and then boom, you'll be out in a few days, no big deal. But it wasn't even on our radar. So if this is something that you do have going on, I mean, plan as much as you can ahead of time, because if it does happen, and I hope that it doesn't, but if it does, you have to have that emergency surgery. You wake up one day and it's, unfortunately, it's your day. To know you have those safeguards in place is huge, especially because the best thing for your recovery is to not be stressed.
Yeah.
I mean, keeping that blood pressure down and the stress down is one of the biggest things you can do for any sort of part of recovery. We've learned that a lot. It's we'll go to the gym, and she's got a little wireless, blood pressure cuff that syncs to her phone, and so every, between sets, we're measuring blood pressure and making sure that she's okay. And so we've learned a lot about what recovery is like for something like this. And like, look, we're mid-30s, marathon runners, triathletes. Like, it's our cardiovascular health is perfect, and it still happened. It was she ran a marathon 3 days before, and we asked the doctors, like, did that do it? Because logically you would think, like,
your body's under a lot of stress.
Yeah, you're stressing your cardio system. And universally, the doctors have said no. It was just like, yeah, that's going to stress your heart, but it's not what caused this. It was your day. And so no matter how healthy you are, you think like, oh, I'm in great shape. I've got this little enlarged thing. I'm doing all this stuff. I mean, that's great, and I hope it never happens to you, but it's not gonna stop it from being your day if it's your day. So
it was instantaneous, like, and that's what I keep saying. It was just crazy. I literally, like, I felt completely fine, and I feel like sometimes to get through something like this, you have to joke about it a little bit, and so we'll say that, like, Oh yeah, when your heart exploded, because that's literally
That's
like,
what it did. I mean, and people look at me like I'm like they're horrified. I was like, that's literally what happened. I'm not hyperbolizing here. Like that's yeah, your heart literally exploded. And you know, to you, I say that to you too. It's every time you're like, oh, I can't believe I can't do this. Like, well, I mean, look what happened. Like the fact that you're up and lifting and running and swimming and biking and all these things is just a miracle. And so, I think that's, as the caretaker side, like that's the biggest thing that I can advise is just be prepared as much as you can. And, hopefully it never happens to you and you never need to use any of these resources, but understanding what can happen and preparing for it is huge. And then, I hate to say it, because there's a large percentage of folks who don't survive, and to plan on that route too. So I'm showing my cards. I'm an attorney, and so like this is the kind of stuff that we think about. Making sure that if this is a risk for you, and maybe you have some particular comorbidities that make you a higher risk, is have those really unfortunate, not fun conversations and plan to take care of the people you care about. I mean, I'm all about like fighting through it and surviving. Obviously, that's the goal, but part of if you're newly diagnosed is just to make sure that you've got everything set so you can take care of people, whether you hopefully make it through that surgery, but there's some people who don't, and it's stinky to talk about, and it sucks, but do that planning, because I know that was huge for us, and I was 9 hours for me. Like obviously I had the easy part of the surgery. I was just waiting around for 9 hours, but
I don't know, I was just sleeping. So.
Yeah, but I mean I didn't understand. So our nurse friend on the unit, she wouldn't go home, and I was curious. Like she just stayed. She worked her whole shift at the hospital, and she just stayed. And and this was not somebody. I mean, we were friends, but we weren't like, I would expect you to stay 9 hours in the hospital, friend. And I only realized it a week or two after, is that she thought you were going to die.
Yeah.
And she didn't want me to get for that nurse to walk out, or the doctor to walk out and tell me that you had died, for me to be alone. And that's why she did me.
Yes.
And
Lindsay, Barge, we need to give a shout out to her.
But it didn't occur to me. And she's one of the nicest human beings. Like this is completely in character for her not to leave. But she'd been on shift for 12 hours, in her own cardiac unit doing the more cardiac stuff, and she would not leave. And I couldn't figure it out. I eventually, had to around 10:30, 11 o'clock, like essentially just be like, no, you have to go. Like she's coming out of surgery. I think the worst is over now. Like we're just giving her blood products. I think if anything was going to happen, it was going to happen now. But I mean, you're in that surgery and you don't know. So you got to be prepared for all those outcomes, as terrible as it is to talk about. And just, talk to each other too. I think recovery has been, be as patient as possible. It's, I don't understand what you've been through. I don't understand what you've gone through, but, it's a process for both of us. You have the much harder part, but for your character, you got to understand, like
you've had to put up with me.
Well, there's a lot of limitations, and so a lot of things, like I said, like, it's hard to, we don't have kids, which is, I won't say like, it's easier for us because we don't have kids, but imagine, say this happened to you and you had a 2 or 3 year old and you can't pick up your kid.
Yeah. There were even things like I bounce back, and I'm pretty stubborn, and I don't like not being able to feel like I'm helping out. Yeah. So like I would do as much as I could, but one of the things I usually do at home is the laundry. And so we have our laundry basket, we have a laundry chute, and it's up high. So I would have to be like, hey, can you bring the laundry down? Because I can't, just things like that. And it was months. I think it was 12 weeks that I couldn't lift over 5 pounds, which is like a gallon of milk. I think it's nothing.
Yeah, it's nothing.
So what have the last few months been like for you?
I mean, it's stressful, but like, I mean, it's been fortunate for me because you recovered so quickly. I mean, now it's just, you're just getting back. And I think the hard thing for me is trying to help you, because you are stubborn and you do want to get back to where you were, is like, how much do I push you to get back to where you were, and how much do I hold you back? Because there's some days where you're doing too much, and I have to rein you back, but also don't want to limit your recovery by not pushing you forward. But no, I mean, honestly, the last couple months, it's been normal.
Mhm.
Like since you were able to kind of recover and get up and out, and very fortunately, you're able to work from home now, which is huge,
Mhm.
just for stress level. Again, knowing that not everybody's gonna have that opportunity, but it's huge that you can. Um, I mean, really, it's just been getting you back like more emotionally and helping you understand your limitations. And
Mhm.
we talk a lot about even just now, like a lot about exercise and running and things like that. Just finding, encouraging you to do alternate things
Mhm.
to like, hey, you maybe can't run, another marathon, which we were already talking about you not doing because you have no cartilage in your knees anyway. So, I mean, even before aortic dissection, that was on the table as being done. But you just understanding, what your limitations are and some of the emotional sides of it, and being okay with being woken up late at night because you're just upset, that
Mhm.
you're sad, you're scared. Um, and just accepting that for you are, and understanding that I don't know what it is you've been through except on an academic level.
Mhm.
I think it's helpful to educate yourself as the caretaker of like what's going on, so I can kind of explain it to you a little bit if you're
Mhm.
curious, because I mean I know.
Well, some of it, I think they probably explained some like during the surgery what
Yeah.
was going on, and then they probably talked to me in the hospital some too. But those first initial days are, kind of like a fog. So
Yeah.
I remember at one point I went for a follow-up appointment, and the nurse practitioner mentioned something about the wires in my chest, and I was like, "What? I have wires in my chest?"
Yeah. That's just holding your stomach together, honey.
Yeah.
Yes.
So just things like that
Yeah.
in the moment, everything's so chaotic that.
Yeah. And just like little stuff too, like for riding the car, like you have to be careful because an airbag could be catastrophic. Just think like, for people who've been diagnosed or maybe recently had surgery, you got to be careful. Like I didn't let you drive for a while. It was a very much like driving Miss Daisy situation where I'd like backseat her and just like literally drive around places because I was afraid of you getting an accident, like airbag going off right into your chest, 4 weeks out of surgery. And, I don't know if that would be fatal, but I know it wouldn't be good. So that, and like, something as simple as seat belts are probably going to hurt. And so we had your aunt, I think, knit like a thing that goes across. You used to have like commercials for them in the 90s.
Yeah.
They kind of went out of style, like the big spreader of the pressure, to go across. And that was huge. And just little ways you can improve your quality of life has been big. And then, trying to get you to reduce your stress too has been, because that's the biggest thing for your recovery is getting your stress and your blood pressure down. And how do we do that, and how do we engineer a space where that stress is going to be lower in our home? And as soon as she came back from the hospital, I had spent a ton of time and money turning his whole sunroom into essentially like a hospital suite. And then this one's up like 4 days later, like because she couldn't climb stairs.
Yeah,
that was the other
our
thing.
bedroom is upstairs.
Our bedroom's upstairs, and she wasn't allowed to climb stairs for days. And then it's like, all right, well, I'll build a whole bedroom downstairs, and then she's back running. But like things you don't think about if you get diagnosed, like, well, I'm on a third floor walk up. Well, that's going to be a problem. Like, that may be an issue that you need to figure out quickly, how you're going to get upstairs or how you're going to live these elements of your daily life. And so, planning for that ahead of time is just huge. Pulling in your network and building your community and letting people know ahead of time, hey, this is something I have going on. Here's a risk. And hopefully this never happens, but this is what the risk factors are. And
I think that's one of the biggest goals of telling my story is just to help other people not feel so alone, but also just to educate because, they told me I had an aortic dissection and I was like, what is that? I have never heard of it before. I have no idea. And, we have some friends in the medical field that when you say it instantly, they know, and they know that it's not a good thing.
Yeah, they all turn like white. It is every, because I represent doctors in my daily practice. And so when I would tell them about my wife, like they start talking about you in the past tense. And I'm like, no, she lived. And they're like, wait, what? Like, that is incredible. Like, they're immediately like, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. Like, no, she made it. But, like,
I'm here, I'm not going anywhere.
This is that's the severity of it is we didn't understand how severe it can be.
And when you have an aortic aneurysm, which are actually much more common, I've been finding out, than I really thought, there's really no symptoms, until if you do have a dissection, obviously. But like, when my aorta started to become enlarged, like I didn't know, I didn't feel anything.
Yeah.
And I guess that's another piece of advice too, is you're gonna laugh when I say this, but listen to your doctors. Because
I hope he's recording this.
because
I'll play that clip back for you.
well, so I have Turner syndrome, which makes the chance of dissection more, which makes it more common. And because of that, I've had to have just different routine testing. I've never had any issues, and every couple of years they recommend doing all this testing. So I've always said, do I really have to have this done? Like, I don't want to spend the money. We haven't met our deductible. It takes a lot of time. And you're actually the one that's always been like, no, you should. If the doctor says to do it,
Yeah.
you should do it. And so that's why I had, when I found out my aorta was enlarged originally, that's why I had it. Was just a routine scan. And thankfully, at least because of that, we had a little bit of an inkling that there was something going on.
Yeah.
So that was definitely helpful.
Because the doctor, when we brought her in for, after she collapsed, they initially thought that there was pressure on your heart. It was a lung issue, and that your lungs were enlarged and they were pressing onto your heart. And so, we were able to kind of say, well, we know she has this enlarged aorta issue. Make sure you look into that. And I would never supplant my knowledge for that of a doctor. That's not what I'm saying at all. But, anything you do to help point them in the right direction and say, hey, maybe check this out is, that could save you too. That could save you hours, time or just pain. I'd never seen, I don't want to scare people, but like, I'd never seen you like this. You were gray. Like you're literally, your skin was gray, and I'd never seen not only you, but like almost anybody in the amount of just pain and discomfort that you were in. And so, again, I don't say that to scare people, but just to, keep up with your doctors, keep up with these scans, keep up with, all of these things. It is, almost nothing's more important. I can't think of anything for us that's more important than that. That's my number one priority. If it's a doctor visit or a scan or whatever, I don't care what it is. Throw it, do it, get it done, because, be proactive about it. Listen to your doctors. And if you, and we had great doctors, we were very lucky, very fortunate, but if you don't feel good about your doctor, find one that you do. Because if your doctor, you feel like it's not a great situation or they're not taking you seriously, and again, not a doctor, but build a relationship with someone you trust. Find somebody good in your area, or whatever you can do to build that relationship before you have to. So we were fortunate we had the relationship with the cardiologist from having Turner syndrome and keeping on our radar. But we were very fortunate. We were very lucky.
And that's my goal, is just by sharing what we've learned and my story, that hopefully we can help others be able to have a successful outcome as well.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know a whole lot, and we were very lucky.
Very lucky.
So.
Very lucky. And I'm not a religious guy, but that's some divine providence here. That's pretty good argument for it. So, yeah.
Well, I hope some of this information has helped, and I'm happy to share and talk with anyone else maybe that is going through similar experience, or just needs someone that understands what they're going through. And I'm sure Zach from the caregiver side too can help offer some advice and support. So thank you for listening. I'm glad that we got a chance to share a story, and I hope it was helpful.